Hey guys, tonight's story is one the British monarchy never wanted you to hear. When Queen Elizabeth I died, her body was sealed in lead and buried deep under Westminster Abbey. But when they finally opened that coffin, what they found didn't match the legend of the Virgin Queen. It wasn't just shocking, it was impossible. Eyewitnesses described something so disturbing, so dangerous to the crown's image, that the records were destroyed and the tomb has remained sealed for over 400 years. No historian, no scientist, no one outside the royal circle has ever been allowed to see what lies inside. So what exactly did they find in Elizabeth's tomb? Why did it trigger a cover-up that's still protected by the church and the monarchy itself? Tonight, we re-diving into one of history's darkest royal secrets, the truth about Elizabeth Tudor, the Virgin Queen who ruled an empire and may have hidden something so explosive that even death couldn't expose it. Because if the rumors are true, the real story buried beneath Westminster Abbey could burn the entire legend of the British crown to ashes. Let's go back to the night it all began. March 24th, 1603, Richmond Palace. A woman is dying. But the truth is, she's been dying for weeks, and she refuses to lie down. Picture this. It's 3 in the morning. The room smells of death and lavender. The servants have been burning incense for days, desperately trying to mask something underneath, something foul, something that clings to the air no matter how much perfume or prayer they pour into it. Queen Elizabeth Tudor is 69 years old. For 44 years, she has ruled England, defied kings, crushed an empire, and turned a bankrupt island into the heart of a global power. She has stared down the Spanish Armada and won. She has outlived every man who ever tried to control her. And now, the most powerful woman in the world is sitting on the floor, not her throne, not even her bed, but a pile of cushions against a cold stone wall, refusing to surrender to sleep. Her ladies-in-waiting are exhausted, broken. For 2 weeks, they've taken shifts, holding her upright, watching her fade like a candle, burning itself to nothing. One will later write in a letter, destroyed almost immediately, though fragments survive. Her Majesty has not lain flat in 17 days. 17 days of sitting, leaning, being held, but never lying down. Why? Why won't she lie down? Catherine Howard, her chief lady-in-waiting, tries again. Her voice trembles with exhaustion. Your Majesty, please, you must rest properly. Let us help you. Elizabeth turns her head slowly, as if her crown still weighs 1,000 pounds. Her eyes, once sharp enough to cut through a man's lies, are cloudy now, unfocused, staring into something far beyond the room. But when she speaks, the command in her voice is still there, the same voice that once rallied an army at Tilbury. The bed is a trap, she whispers. Each word grinds out like it's being carved from stone. Death waits there. Then she laughs, a thin, high, brittle laugh that makes every servant in the room freeze. It's not the laughter of a queen. It's the laughter of someone standing on the edge of something they can come back from. No one says it out loud, but everyone is thinking it. The queen has gone mad. She talks to people who aren't there. She argues with her father, Henry VIII, dead for more than 50 years. Last night, she screamed that men in black were clawing their way through the walls. Yesterday, she called for her mother, Anne Boleyn, in the voice of a frightened child, and every woman in the room wept silently, pretending not to hear the most powerful queen in history crying out for the mother her father beheaded. But maybe, just maybe, she isn't mad. Maybe after 70 years of wearing masks, both the powdered, painted ones and the political ones, something in her mind finally shattered under the weight. Or maybe she's right. Maybe lying down is surrender. And Elizabeth Tudor has never surrendered, not to her father's wrath, not to her sister's executioner, not to Philip of Spain's armada, not even to time itself. So she sits, and she waits, and her ladies hold her upright, whispering prayers under their breath, wondering how much longer this can go on, because Elizabeth Tudor is not going into that bed. And when she finally does, when her body gives out, when even her will cannot fight anymore, what they find beneath those layers of silk and jewels and centuries of deception will haunt everyone who sees it. That discovery sparks a cover-up that lasts for centuries. A secret Westminster Abbey guards more fiercely than the crown jewels themselves. But to understand what really happened that night, to understand why Elizabeth's death became the most dangerous secret in English history, we need to go back, way back, before the crown, before the legend, before she learned that survival meant becoming someone else entirely. It's 1536. A little girl, not yet 3 years old, stands in a cold stone corridor inside a royal palace. Outside, a crowd is roaring, thousands of voices rising and falling like waves. And then, suddenly, silence, complete silence, and all she can hear now is her own breathing and the soft rustle of her red velvet dress. She doesn't know it yet, but that silence means her mother, Anne Boleyn, has just been executed by order of her father, King Henry VIII, and in that moment, the child who will become England's greatest queen learns her first lesson about power, fear, and survival. That's where it begins. The day they killed her mother. The day Elizabeth Tudor learned the most important lesson of her life. The one that would shape everything she'd become. Being a woman can get you killed. May 19th, 1536. The Tower of London. The morning is grey, heavy with that thin London rain that soaks through everything. Stone, silk, skin. They don't let Elizabeth see the execution. Of course they don't. She's only 2 years and 8 months old, barely more than a baby. But she hears it. Oh, she hears everything. The palace has thin walls, and sound travels, especially when thousands have gathered outside, not to pray, not to mourn, but to watch a queen die. The crowd packs into the tower grounds like it's market day. People push, shout, pay bribes for a better view. And then Anne Boleyn walks out onto the scaffold. Gray damask gown, trimmed with fur, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, ready for the sword. Even now, she's composed, elegant. Anne Boleyn has always known how to use words like weapons, and she uses them one last time. She proclaims her innocence, but carefully, so carefully. She never accuses the king directly. Even as she stands, moments from death, she's still protecting her daughter. Because one wrong word, one moment of anger, could mean Elizabeth follows her onto this same scaffold. The French executioner is the best money can buy, brought over specially for his skill. They say he can take off a head in one clean stroke, quick, painless, almost merciful, almost, and kneels, whispers a prayer, one stroke, and the queen's head rolls across the platform. The crowd roars its approval, like they've just witnessed a show, not a murder. And somewhere in the palace, a little girl in a red velvet dress is told that her mother has gone away, that she's been wicked, that she must never, ever say her mother's name again, not if she wants to live. Elizabeth doesn't fully understand, but she feels it. The fear in the servants' faces, the silence in the corridors, the way people avoid looking at her. She knows her mother is gone, and that somehow her father had something to do with it. The great, bearded king who sometimes smiled at her, and sometimes didn't. The man who smelled of wine, sweat, and rot from the ulcer on his leg. Within days, Elizabeth is declared a bastard, a word she doesn't yet understand, but one she will never forget. Her title is stripped away like tearing off a crown. She's no longer Princess Elizabeth, heir to the throne. She's just Lady Elizabeth now. Her household is dismantled, her servants dismissed, her rooms emptied. She's sent away to a quiet country manor, smaller staff, less money, less food. Her gowns too tight, too short, because no one bothers to order new ones anymore. And that's where she stays, watching, listening, learning. She learns that safety is an illusion, that love can turn to execution, that being royal doesn't make you powerful, not if you're a woman. Here's what most people don't understand about Henry VIII's court. It wasn't just dangerous, it was a slaughterhouse dressed in gold, a place where smiles hid daggers, where you could dine with the king one night and face the headsman the next morning, where you could go to bed a queen and wake up with your head in a basket. Elizabeth grows up watching that happen, again and again, each new stepmother teaching her another brutal lesson about survival. In the next 11 years, Henry marries 4 more times, and little Elizabeth pays attention to every single one. This, not her tutors, not her books, is her real education. Jane Seymour, wife number 3, quiet, gentle, everything Anne Boleyn wasn't. She gives Henry what no other woman could, a son, and it kills her. Jane dies, giving birth to the future King Edward VI. Henry actually mourns her, genuinely. Elizabeth, just 4 years old, watches her father weep, and she learns something vital. Even if you give men exactly what they want, it might destroy you anyway. Then comes Anne of Cleves, wife number 4, smart, far smarter than people gave her credit for. When Henry decides he doesn't want her, calls her ugly, mocks her in court, Anne doesn't argue, she doesn't fight. She accepts the annulment, accepts her new title as the king's beloved sister. She accepts her freedom, and most importantly, she stays alive. Elizabeth is 7 now, old enough to understand, and she learns, adapt or die, bend when you must. Survival matters more than pride. Then comes Catherine Howard, wife number 5, 19 years old. Pretty, flirtatious, and either foolish or far too young to understand the game she's playing. She's accused of adultery, or maybe framed. The truth doesn't matter, not in Henry's court. And Elizabeth watches again as another woman walks up to the scaffold. But in Henry's court, accusation is conviction. There's no trial that matters. She's beheaded at the Tower. Same scaffold as Anne Boleyn. The same cold stone soaked in the same family blood. Elizabeth is 8 years old, and she learns youth and beauty won't save you. In fact, they might condemn you. Being desirable makes you a target. Catherine Parr finally arrives. Wife number 6. She's brilliant, careful, strategic. She survives Henry by being essentially invisible, by never threatening him, never contradicting him, by nursing him through his final rotting years. When the smell of his infected leg is so bad that servants burn incense constantly and still gag, she outlives him by being so careful, so controlled, that he forgets she's dangerous at all. Elizabeth is 10 years old by the time Henry marries Catherine, and this one she actually gets close to. Catherine is kind to her, arranges for her education, treats her like a daughter, and Elizabeth learns strategic invisibility is survival. Don't stand out. Don't make waves. Don't remind them you exist until you're ready to make your move. But here's what else Elizabeth is learning during these years. While she's being shuffled from manna to manna, while she's watching women die or disappear, books are safer than people. Knowledge can't betray you. While other girls her age are learning needlework and music and how to manage a household skills, meant to make them good wives, Elizabeth is learning Latin and Greek and French and Italian and Spanish. By the time she's 11, she's translating religious texts for fun. By 13, she's debating theology with scholars twice her age. By 15, she's fluent in 6 languages and has read more philosophy than most university students will ever encounter. Why? Because words don't betray you the way people do. Books don't change their minds. Knowledge can't be taken away the way titles can, the way your mother's head can, the way everything else in her life has been stripped from her without warning. Every language she masters, every book she reads, every hour spent studying is one more layer of protection against a world that's trying to kill her. It's armor made of ideas instead of steel. Her tutor, Roger Ascham, will later write that Elizabeth had a mind that was more than masculine, sharp and quick beyond measure. It's meant as a compliment, the highest praise he can think of. What he doesn't understand is that she's not showing off. She's not trying to impress anyone. She's building herself into something that can't be dismissed or destroyed, something too valuable to kill. And then finally, her father dies. January 28th, 1547. Henry VIII succumbs to the infected leg ulcer that has been poisoning him for years, that has been leaking pus and rotting flesh for so long that his entire body has become septic. He's been literally rotting alive for a decade. The smell so overpowering that servants burn lavender and rosemary and sage constantly and still have to hold their breath when they enter his chambers. When he dies, his body has swollen so grotesquely that they apparently have to scoop him into his coffin because his corpse has burst through his clothes. The king, who terrorized England for 38 years, ends as a bloated, stinking corpse that no one wants to touch. Elizabeth is 13 years old. She survived him. Against all odds, she's still alive. Her 9-year-old half-brother becomes Edward VI, controlled by a council of Protestant fanatics who immediately start executing Catholics with the same enthusiasm Henry showed executing Protestants. The fires at Smithfield blaze again. Different victims now, but the same screams echo off the same stones. England is burning, and this is where Elizabeth Tudor's real education begins. Under Edward VI, the country is tearing itself apart. 6 years of chaos, 6 years of religious violence, over doctrine, over dogma, over whether communion is literal or symbolic, over whether saints' statues should be smashed or saved. Insanity, really, questions that shouldn't cost lives, but they do. If you back the wrong side, you burn, literally, tied to a stake, surrounded by kindling. The flames crawl up your legs first, blistering, devouring, suffocating, until the smoke chokes you faster than mercy ever could. Sometimes it takes 20 minutes to die. Elizabeth watches it all, and she learns, again, that silence is survival. She goes to Protestant services because that's what Edward wants. She reads her Bible. She recites her prayers. She gives them nothing, no opinions, no hesitation, no reason to accuse her of anything. She's becoming a master of disguise, not with costumes, but with her behavior. She can become whatever they need her to be. That's how you live through a Tudor reign. But something else is happening now, quietly, secretly. Something inside her own body, something that will fuel centuries of whispers. She's 13, 14, 15, the age when girls become women. But Elizabeth doesn't, not quite. Her ladies-in-waiting notice first. They tea-talk openly, of course not, but they whisper in corners when they think she isn't tea listening. Something's off. Her monthly cycles are irregular or absent altogether. Her body isn't changing the way it should. Ambassadors begin sending strange reports back to their kings. They describe her as unusually tall, nearly 6 feet, towering over other women of her time. They note her voice deeper than expected, almost masculine, her build strong, athletic, broad-shouldered. The Lady Elizabeth moves like a soldier, not a maiden, one diplomat writes. Her form is not as other women's, says another, more carefully. His Majesty would find her most unusual. What were they seeing? What made them hint at something they couldn't put into words? We'll come back to that. Because in 1553, everything changes. Edward VI is dead. He, S15, just a boy, coughing up blood and pieces of his lungs before he finally begs for death. Tuberculosis, most likely, or poison, maybe. No one's certain, but his death unleashes a storm, and the crown falls to his half-sister, Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary. The name she earned soon enough. A devout Catholic, determined to drag England back to Rome, no matter how many bodies it takes. The fires at Smithfield burn hotter than ever. Men, women, even children, all torched alive for the crime of believing the wrong thing. The smell of human flesh becomes part of the London air, and Mary hasn't forgotten. She remembers everything. That Elizabeth is the daughter of Anne Boleyn, the woman who replaced her mother, Catherine of Aragon. That Elizabeth is the living ghost of that betrayal. Mary looks at her sister and sees her mother's murderer staring back, and she hates what she sees. So the first thing Mary does is purge the heretics. The second is arrest Elizabeth. March 1554. Rain lashes the Thames as Elizabeth's barge glides toward the Tower of London, the same fortress where her mother died. The same stones, the same chill, the same shadows that remember the sound of an executioner's sword. She's 20 years old, and she believes she's going to die. She's sick, feverish, trembling. Her stomach swollen in strange ways her doctors can't explain or won't. Pain grips her abdomen. Bleeding comes and goes without reason. Whispers swirl, pregnancy, disease, witchcraft. No one dares say anything out loud. As the barge stops beneath Trader's Gate, Elizabeth refuses to move. Rain pours down, soaking her gown, her hair, her face. The water beneath her is black and oily. Every prisoner knows what that gate means. You go in, you don't come out. For a long moment, she just sits there, silent, frozen. Then, finally, she raises her head and says, loud enough for everyone on the river to hear, "I am no traitor. I am the king's true daughter. I am no traitor. It doesn't matter. The guards don't care." The gate opens, and the Virgin Queentabby steps into her own death sentence. Her cell is in the bell tower, not the worst in the fortress, but still a prison, cold, damp, and echoing. A single window. Guards outside her door, day and night, listening to every sound, reporting every word. And so she waits. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months, 2 months of not knowing, 2 months of waking every morning wondering if today is the day they come for her, if this breakfast is her last, if those footsteps outside her cell are coming to take her to the scaffold. The charges are flimsy, barely a rumor, a few letters, a few whispers, nothing solid. But in Mary's England, truth doesn't matter. If the Queen wants blood, that's reason enough. Mary Tudor wants blood. She wants to erase everything her father built, every trace of Anne Boleyn, every flicker of Protestant rebellion that threatens her dream of a restored Catholic England. And at the center of it all stands her sister, Elizabeth. Inside the Tower of London, Elizabeth is questioned again and again. The same questions, repeated 20 different ways. Did you know about the rebellion? Did you help plan it? Who are you working with? What are you hiding? Every time the same calm answers. No, no, no. She insists she's loyal. She swears she loves her sister. She plays the role flawlessly, respectful but never weak, clever but never defiant, every word balanced on a knife's edge. She never admits guilt, but she never calls her interrogators liars either, because in Tudor England, calling a royal servant wrong is treason enough. Elizabeth is brilliant, terrifyingly so. She knows when to appear fragile, clutching her stomach, groaning in pain until they stop the questioning. She knows when to appear devoted, writing letters dripping with affection and loyalty, so exaggerated they border on satire. But no one dares laugh. It's all theater. Every sigh, every tear, every word is a performance, a desperate performance, and it works. Barely, because Mary wants her dead. Everyone knows it. Mary's advisors whisper that Elizabeth is too dangerous to live. She's the daughter of Anne Boleyn, the woman who destroyed Mary's mother, and now she's become a living banner for the Protestant cause. But there's a problem, a dangerous one. The people love her. Mary's fires at Smithfield are burning too hot, too often, too cruelly. Men, women, even children turned to ash in the name of faith. London's air reeks of charred flesh and smoke, and the crowds are beginning to turn. They whisper that the Queen has gone mad with holy zeal, and the one name on every tongue, the one name spoken in secret with hope, is Elizabeth. The Protestant princess locked in the Tower has become a symbol of resistance. If Mary kills her, it could spark an uprising, a real one this time, that could rip the country apart. So Elizabeth lives, but only just. 2 months pass in the Tower. 2 months of silence, of waiting, of hearing the slow footsteps of other prisoners being led to their deaths, and wondering, will the next pair of footsteps stop at my door? And here's what that kind of fear does to a body. Years later, one of her ladies in waiting will confess, when it's finally safe to speak, that during Elizabeth's imprisonment, her bleeding stopped completely. No monthly cycles, nothing for months. And afterward, it never returned to normal. Sometimes months would pass with nothing. Other times, pain so fierce she could barely stand, bleeding so heavy she couldn't rise from bed. Stress can do that. When your body believes you might die, it shuts everything else down. Reproduction stops. Survival takes over. But what if it wasn't just stress? What if the trauma of the Tower didn't just break her body? It revealed something hidden. What if the mystery that surrounded Elizabeth's body from childhood deepened in that darkness? A secret no one would ever name aloud. We're deep in the realm of speculation now, where history fades into mystery. But the clues are there, scattered across centuries. if you know how to look. May 1554. Release, or something like it. Elizabeth is moved from the Tower to house arrest, first at Woodstock, then at Hatfield. Still a prisoner, still watched day and night, but alive. And for now, that's enough. Mary, meanwhile, is writing her own tragedy. She marries Philip II of Spain, and England hates it. No one wants a Spanish king. No one wants their island to become another province of Spain's empire. But Mary doesn't care. She wants Philip. She wants a child. She wants a Catholic heir to secure the faith and erase Elizabeth from the line of succession forever. And then she announces she's pregnant. The bells ring. The people cheer. Finally, an heir. Finally, a future for Catholic England. Months pass. Mary's belly swells. She follows all the rituals, seclusion, prayer, midwives at the ready. The court prepares for the birth of the royal child, but the days stretch on, then weeks, no labor, no child. Eventually, she must emerge from her confinement and face the truth. There is no baby. There never was. A phantom pregnancy, her body so desperate, so consumed by longing, that it mimics every symptom of motherhood. Her belly swells with fluid, not life. Her breasts produce milk for a child that doesn't exist. Imagine the humiliation. Imagine standing before your court, before ambassadors, nobles, servants, and admitting that your own body betrayed you, that you believed so fiercely in a lie, your body tried to make it real. 2 years later, it happens again. Another pregnancy, another confinement, another empty cradle. And this time, Mary is 43, sick, broken, and dying. Her body has failed her. Her dream has failed her. And somewhere beyond the palace walls, Elizabeth Tudor, the woman she nearly destroyed, is waiting, silent, patient, watching the fire burn itself out, because soon enough, the ashes will be hers to rise from. Mary Tudor dies on November 17th, 1558, likely of uterine cancer. The same pain and swelling she once mistook for pregnancy. Her body failing, her faith unshaken. She leaves the world in agony, and all of England turns toward Elizabeth, the heir, the Protestant hope, the survivor. Elizabeth is at Hatfield when the news comes. She's sitting beneath an oak tree, reading Greek philosophy, because of course she is. Counselors ride in, splattered with mud, and kneel before her in the grass. Elizabeth, by the grace of God, Queen of England and Ireland, according to legend. She murmurs Psalm 118 in Latin. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Maybe, but in truth, she probably just sat there, trying not to faint. She's 25 years old. She survived her father's wrath, her brother's zealots, her sister's executioners. Against all odds, she's alive. And now, she's the most powerful woman in the world. The crown should feel like victory, but it feels like a cage, because now come the men, and the marriage question. Before her coronation robes have even settled, her council, all men, present a united front. Her Majesty must marry. She must produce an heir. A woman cannot rule alone. They speak like tutors, explaining arithmetic to a child. Parliament follows, politely demanding the same thing: a husband, a child, a king beside her throne. The message is clear. She's not a real queen until she belongs to a man. Foreign princes circle like wolves. Every eligible bachelor in Europe wants her hand, not her heart, because whoever marries Elizabeth controls England. Whoever gets her pregnant controls its future. Whoever shares her bed shares her power. First comes Philip II of Spain, her dead sister, Mary's widower, twice her age, cold, fanatically Catholic. He wants to move from one Tudor sister to the next, like they're interchangeable pieces in a royal game. Elizabeth smiles, flatters, and stalls. She thanks him for the honor, promises to pray on it, sends carefully worded letters, full of nothing. For 3 years, she strings him along, until he gives up and marries elsewhere. Later, he'll send an armada to claim by force what she refused to give. She was right to say no. Marriage to Philip would have turned England into another Spanish province. Then comes Archduke Charles of Austria, young, handsome, Protestant, a better match on paper. But marrying him would drag England into the endless wars of the Holy Roman Empire. So she plays her favorite game, the long dance, requests portraits, praises his virtues, asks clever questions, seems interested, never commits. Years pass. He marries someone else. Then Eric XIV of Sweden. His painters send portraits that grow more absurd with each shipment. More muscles, more hair, more glory. Elizabeth hangs them in her chambers and laughs with her ladies. By next year, she jokes, he'll paint himself a god. She never takes him seriously. Good instinct. Eric will end up imprisoned, insane, poisoned in his soup. And then comes Francis, Duke of Anjou, 20 years younger, French, charming, dangerously alive. This one gets further than the rest. They write, they flirt, they exchange gifts. She calls him her little frog. They even meet in person, rare for Elizabeth. Court whispers say she almost gave in, that maybe, just maybe, she felt something, but she never marries him. She never marries anyone, because Elizabeth knows something no one else understands. In her world, marriage isn't partnership, it's surrender. A husband isn't protection, he's power wearing a smile. And Elizabeth Tudor will never, ever surrender. Most marriage negotiations happen entirely through ambassadors, sight unseen until the wedding day. But Anjou comes to England, visits her court, and they spend weeks together. He's short and ugly and pockmarked from smallpox, but apparently charming. Elizabeth seems genuinely fond of him, or genuinely fond of something. Whether it's him, or the attention, or the political advantages of a French alliance is impossible to say. They get close, really close. There are rumors she actually marry this time, but he's Catholic, firmly, devoutly Catholic, and England will riot if she marries a Catholic. The country spent Mary's entire reign burning under Catholic rule. Elizabeth's popularity, her entire political position rests on being the Protestant queen. Marrying a Catholic would shatter, that would turn her supporters against her, would potentially trigger the kind of uprising that could destroy her. The negotiations eventually collapse. Both sides blame the other. Anjou returns to France, dies a few years later, probably from tuberculosis. Elizabeth keeps his portrait on her bedside table for years afterward. Was it love? Probably not, but maybe affection, maybe regret for the path not taken. And then there's Robert Dudley. This one's different. This one actually matters. This one is real. Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. They've known each other since childhood, grew up in the same circles, at court. He'd been at her coronation, literally leading her horse through the streets of London in the parade, positioned where everyone could see him, close to her, favored. He's tall and handsome and ambitious and charming, Protestant, which is essential, intelligent enough to keep up with her, brave enough to challenge her when necessary, perfect in almost every way except for one small problem. He's married His wife, Amy Robsart, lives in the country at Cumnor Place, while Robert spends all his time at court, constantly with Elizabeth. They ride together every morning. They hunt together. They dance together at every banquet. They're inseparable in a way that makes everyone whisper, makes ambassadors send scandalized reports back to their kings, makes the court buzz with speculation. Is she sleeping with him? Probably not. Elizabeth is too paranoid about pregnancy, too aware that one bastard child would destroy everything. One illegitimate baby, and she becomes her mother, the fallen woman. The cautionary tale: she can't risk it, won't risk it, but emotionally, absolutely. This is the closest Elizabeth ever comes to romantic love. She lights up when he enters a room. She laughs at his jokes. She touches his arm when they talk. Casual intimacy that she allows no one else. She gives him gifts, expensive presents that raise eyebrows, that make people mutter about favoritism and impropriety. And Robert loves her back, or loves her power, or loves the possibility of becoming king consort. Maybe all three. It's impossible to separate his genuine feelings from his ambition, but he wants her. That much is clear. And then in September of 1560, Amy Robsart dies, falls down the stairs at Cumnor Place and breaks her neck. Just falls. Trips on her skirts maybe, or misses a step, or who knows. The servants find her at the bottom of the stairs, dead, her neck broken. Suspicious. Oh, incredibly suspicious. Impossibly suspicious. The timing is too perfect, too convenient. Dudley's wife dies just when he needs her gone. Just when Elizabeth might be willing to marry him if he were free. The rumors explode immediately, spreading through Europe like wildfire. Dudley murdered her, everyone says. Hired someone to push her, to make it look like an accident. Or Elizabeth herself ordered it, people whisper. The Queen had her lover's wife murdered so she could marry him herself. The scandal is massive, international. Every ambassador in Europe is writing shocked, gleeful letters home about the murderous Queen of England and her ambitious lover. Some historians think Amy was actually ill, possibly dying of breast cancer, and that her bones were brittle from the disease, making the fall genuinely accidental. Some think she jumped, committing suicide because she was in pain or depressed, or knew she was dying anyway. Some think she was pushed. We'll never know. The investigation at the time was inconclusive, carefully inconclusive, finding that it was an accident, but in a way that satisfied no one. And here's the thing, the tragedy of it. Elizabeth wants to marry him. She's in love, probably the only time in her life she genuinely loves someone romantically. Wants someone not for political advantage, but just because she wants him. And she could do it. She's queen. She could marry whoever she wants. Scandal be damned. She could weather the storm, could wait for the rumors to die down, could force her counselors to accept it, but they frightened to revolt. Her advisors, the men she depends on to run the country, make it clear they'll resign en masse if she marries Dudley under this cloud of suspicion. The scandal would destroy her, they tell her. Foreign powers would use it as proof that England is ruled by a murderess. The legitimacy of her reign would crumble. Catholic Europe would see it as justification for invasion, for removing her from power, for installing a proper Catholic monarch who doesn't have blood on her hands. So, she doesn't marry him, but she doesn't send him away either. She keeps him close, makes him of Leicester, gives him estates and titles and more power than any unmarried woman should give to any man, flirts with him in public, lets everyone think they might be lovers, which drives the ambassadors crazy. trying to figure out what's actually happening. Are they sleeping together? Are they secretly married? Is he really her lover or just her favorite? The speculation never ends. Were they sleeping together? The evidence suggests probably not. Elizabeth was too paranoid about pregnancy, too aware that one mistake could destroy everything. But emotionally, she was as close to Dudley as she ever was to anyone. He's the one person she trusts, the one person who can argue with her without fear of immediate execution, the one person she wants to see every day. And here's the interesting part, the tantalizing clue. Years later, when Dudley is dying, weakened by fever and stomach illness, that's probably cancer, he writes her a final letter. It's found among her private papers after her death, tied with a ribbon marked in her own handwriting with 3 words, his last letter. In it, he mentions the truth we alone know, the secret that bound us in sorrow rather than in joy. What truth? What secret? The letter doesn't say. Dudley's too careful or too weak to write it explicitly, and Elizabeth keeps it but never explains. But combined with everything else, with the refusal to marry anyone, the lack of children, the mysterious illnesses, the strange reports from ambassadors about her unusual body, a picture starts to form. A theory emerges that's impossible to prove, but increasingly difficult to dismiss. What if Elizabeth couldn't have children? What if something was physically wrong with her reproductive system, something that made pregnancy impossible? What if the Virgin Queen wasn't making a choice at all, but hiding a medical reality that would have destroyed her legitimacy, that would have given her enemies exactly the ammunition they needed to remove her? Let's talk about the evidence, because it's scattered across decades and buried in diplomatic code and medical euphemism, but it's there if you know how to look. It's there in the things people don't quite say, in the observations they make and then walk back, in the patterns that emerge when you put all the pieces together. Foreign ambassadors in Elizabeth's court were essentially spies. That was their job. Kings needed intelligence, needed to know everything about potential marriage partners, potential allies, potential threats. So ambassadors watched everything. They noted what people wore, how they moved, how they spoke. They assessed health, temperament, appearance, everything. And they sent detailed reports home, some of them shockingly explicit, describing people's bodies in ways that would be considered invasive today. And the reports about Elizabeth are odd, consistently odd, across multiple ambassadors from multiple countries over many years. Multiple diplomats note her manly voice, not just deep for a woman, but actually masculine in tone and timbre. They comment on it repeatedly. This striking feature that doesn't match her appearance. They describe her unusual height and strength for a woman. Elizabeth was nearly 6 feet tall, which is tall now, but in the 1500s, when the average woman was barely over 5 feet, she was literally giant. She towered over most men, and she was strong, athletic, rode horses for hours, hunted with stamina that exhausted younger courtiers. They mention her masculine manner of speaking, not just her voice, but the way she expressed herself. Blunt, direct, forceful. She argued like a man, they wrote. She commanded like a king rather than asking like a queen. One Spanish envoy, Diego Guzman Silva, writes to Philip II in 1565 that Her Majesty's form is not as other women's. He's being diplomatic, using coded language, but he's saying something significant. He's saying Elizabeth's body is different, unusual, not normal for a woman. And then he's suddenly recalled to Spain before he can elaborate. before he can explain what he meant, which is convenient and suspicious. The Venetian ambassador, Giovanni Michele, reports in 1557 that Elizabeth has more the bearing of a soldier than a lady with great presence and commanding height. He describes her as having a very loud voice and masculine manner of speaking. Another diplomat writes that she has the stride of a man and voice to match. He sounds confused, like he's trying to describe something he doesn't quite understand, something that doesn't fit his expectations of how queens should be. These aren't insults. They're not trying to mock her. They're genuinely confused observations. Elizabeth doesn't quite fit the expected template for a woman of her era, and they're trying to report that fact without being explicit about whatever they're noticing. Then there are the medical incidents, the times when doctors actually got to examine her, rare occasions when she was too ill to refuse, and what they found troubled them deeply. In 1566, Elizabeth falls seriously ill. She's 33 years old. High fever that spikes and falls unpredictably. Sweat so severe she soaks through her bedding. Pain in her abdomen so severe she can't stand upright. Has to curl into a ball, clutching her stomach. She thinks she's dying. Genuinely believes this is the end. And she nearly names Robert Dudley as Lord Protector to rule, until a new monarch can be chosen, which shows how delirious she is, because that would have triggered immediate civil war. Her doctors are finally allowed to examine her properly. This almost never happens. Touching the Queen's body is essentially forbidden without explicit permission. It's considered so intimate, so inappropriate, but she's dying, or they think she is, so they're given access. What they find is never officially recorded. No medical report survives. No diagnosis is written down. The official records just say she recovered after a few weeks of illness. But one physician, Dr. Hick, her personal doctor, who'd attended her 4 years, emerges from her chambers looking, according to a courtier's diary, pale and troubled, as if he had seen something that shook him to his core. He refuses to discuss what he saw, won't tell his medical colleagues what he discovered during the examination. When pressed, he becomes angry, defensive, insists that the Queen's privacy must be protected, and he'll say nothing, nothing at all. A year later, he's dead. Sudden fever, dies within days. The official cause is listed simply as fever. No details given, very sudden, very convenient. In 1568, another incident. Elizabeth is 35. She collapses during a Privy Council meeting, just faints suddenly in the middle of discussing policy. Her counselors carry her to her chambers. They summon her ladies. When they loosen her clothing to help her breathe, one of them faints, just drops to the floor. The others quickly clear the room, shut the doors, send the servants away. No record ever says what they saw. No explanation is written. But everyone knew something happened, something shocking enough to make a court lady collapse at the sight of the Queen's body. Modern historians began to wonder what could possibly have caused that. Some believe Elizabeth may have had androgen insensitivity syndrome, AIS, a rare genetic condition where someone is born with XY chromosomes, genetically male, but their body can't process testosterone, so they appear fully female on the outside. But inside, there are no ovaries, no uterus, no way to conceive. And suddenly, the puzzle pieces start fitting. Elizabeth was nearly 6 feet tall, towering for her era. She had a notably deep voice. Reports from foreign ambassadors mention her smooth skin, her lack of body hair, her ageless face. Her ladies were famously evasive when asked if the Queen was regular, and of course she never married, never bore children. If true, it explains everything. The lifelong secrecy, the refusal to marry, the obsession with control. A wedding night could have exposed her secret and destroyed her reign. In Tudor England, an intersex body would have been branded unnatural, monstrous. It would have been the end of her. So she built her power on purity. She turned her biology into legend. She became the Virgin Queen, not just by choice, but perhaps by necessity. Other scholars propose different conditions, Swyer syndrome, hormonal disorders, but we'll never know, because the one piece of evidence that could confirm the truth lies sealed beneath stone. Elizabeth's coffin rests in Westminster Abbey, and for 4 centuries, every request to examine it, every petition, every proposal has been denied, 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 denied again. Even with technology that could see through the coffin without touching it, they said no. The Queen's rest must not be disturbed. Maybe it's out of respect, maybe it's out of fear. Because what if the greatest queen in English history, the woman who defined an age, was not the person history thought she was? Maybe her greatest secret didn't die with her, it was buried with her. Maybe her greatest secret didn't die with her, it was buried with her. But here's the thing about Elizabeth. She knew how to turn weakness into power, mystery into immortality. Whether her virginity was a choice, a strategy, or something her body decided for her, it doesn't matter anymore, because she made it her crown. The Virgin Queen became more than a woman. She became an idea, untouchable, unconquered, eternal. She ruled for 45 years, an era that still bears her name. She faced assassination plots, invasions, betrayals, heartbreak, and won. She saw empires rise and burn, saw men who doubted her buried and forgotten. When she finally died in 1603, England mourned not just a monarch, but the end of an age of light, of language, of discovery, the Elizabethan age. They laid her to rest in Westminster Abbey, beneath marble and legend. On her tomb are carved the words she earned with every choice, every scar, every secret. She was a prince and feared as a king. And maybe that's the final truth. Elizabeth Tudor began as a girl no one expected to survive, the daughter of a disgraced queen, locked in a tower, waiting to die. But she rose, she ruled, and in the end, she rewrote what it meant to be a woman, a ruler, and a legend. Because even for centuries later, we're still trying to figure out who she really was.